Welcome back to White Guys with Glasses and Beards, Balding. No, that's actually not the name of this podcast. Welcome back to Direct Edition. And today I have a good friend of mine and a special guest. He is an artist. He is a creator. He is a Brightmare bringer. He is a trading card creator. I mean, this man has so many talents. If I sat here and listed them all off, I'd be here until 2026. So I'll just say, Alex Pardee, how the hell are you, my friend?
I am hanging in there, like the poster.
Yeah, and kitten on the branch, just hanging in there.
No, I'm doing great. No, yeah, that might have sounded sarcastic, but I am genuinely doing good.
That's really good. Yeah, before we started recording, we started talking about the LA fires, and you're in the thick of it in Southern California and in LA, but everything turned out unscathed.
Yeah, very, very grateful, very lucky to be, where we are. We evacuated, but, safely, had enough time to get stuff out. And, yeah, I mean, the whole thing is stressful and horrible, but, what can you do?
Yeah.
Now, just thankful, I guess.
Yes. And as we said, it's like you can worry about the world, but you really have to concentrate on your inner circle. And thank you for also evacuating, not only with your dog, Harvey, but with our mutual love of our lives, Dave Correa.
I mean, Dave, I wouldn't have said that I wouldn't have evacuated without Dave, but having Dave definitely helped the transition and helped be I am naturally an anxious person. Mm-hmm. I freak out about stuff, and Dave has always been the one that keeps me calm. So having Dave there was definitely like, okay, we can do this. Let's go. Let's just casually leave.
That's something that we both, I mean, obviously you've known Dave for almost 3 decades at this point. But Dave is very much that for me too. If I'm having like a shitty day and I want to talk to somebody that's going to make my day better, I'll call Dave and we'll just talk about whatever. It's not like he's my therapist or anything, but he's one of those people that is very able to look at the other side of anxiety and be like, no, it's going to be okay.
Yeah, he's always been like that to me too, and oftentimes I question what the mutual friendship at least like what I provide for that, because I'm always asking him for help, I'm always asking him for comfort, I'm always asking him for just like advice, and then I'm like, meanwhile he's like, hey, can you do this? I'm like, dude, I'm in LA. I'm nope. Nothing.
Yeah, let's just let's dedicate this podcast in total to Dave. We don't have to talk about him the whole time, but I think in general in life, like we all need a friend that balances us out, that doesn't have to involve like I know it's like, what's the mutual benefit of being my friend or you saying that? But I think we all need to know somebody. And I'm blessed to not just know him, but have 2 other friends that I've had for 30 something years that are like that, they understand who I am. So they're not running away from me.
Yeah.
No,
like surrounding yourself with a couple of people where you don't have to put on any kind of subconscious display of anything.
Yeah.
like if somebody not like nowadays, like it's almost like paranoia driven. If somebody knocks on your door or calls and says like, hey, can I come over for like a pop in? You're like, oh my God, what are we going to do? What am I going to show him? What are we going to entertain? And like, if Dave just knocked on my door, I'd be like, I don't know, come in. Yeah. And then like sit down and I'm like, cool, this is fine. Yeah. Wouldn't even stress.
It's interesting. And this is like completely, we're just going that way. But, I was having a conversation with somebody recently, and I was thinking about how like nobody knocks on doors anymore. So when somebody does these days, or it's just like, why are you at my
stranger? Yeah, it's like somebody is here to kill me. Like, don't they know I have a ring cam? Like, what's going on? Like,
it is a strange thing. I mean, calls also, but at least now with our phones, like who's calling, or you don't pick it up.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, it's knocks on the doors are so rare. Even like. Also, it's heightened because my dog is super chill with the exception of anyone knocking on the door. And then it's like the world is ending and he spirals. And so like if somebody knocks on the door, it's me dealing with him while I'm thinking about who's at the door. And I'm like, just stop. They're going to know we're home.
You'll give it away. There's Um, it's interesting. One of the things that I did want to speak to you about is something that we both share in common, and you're open with, your anxiety struggles and depression. But I know it's like kind of the genesis of you kind of being into art and learning that you can create art, and like your trigger for creating art is that.
Yeah, I mean, that is 100% true. Like, I was uh I was always interested in art and cartooning and comic books, even through elementary school. As long, I think there was a pivotal moment in 3rd grade where I think it was 1985, and in 1985, within the same school year, Garbage Pail Kids were released and hugely trendy. Um, Santa Cruz skateboard graphics were kind of
Right.
becoming the norm, and skateboarders were becoming rock stars. And my dad had gotten me a couple of reprints of Tales from the Crypt comics,
Hmm.
and so those kind of 3 things within that year were kind of like my first foray into, like, this is what I like, not necessarily what I like to do, but this is who I am. These 3 things are who I am. And then, so I was into like doodling and stuff, but never had any kind of like dreams or desires or anything. And then yeah, when I was about 14 or 15, I just had a really, really, like, something switched in my brain, some kind of chemical went off, and I started struggling really bad with anxiety and panic disorder and depression. And, you know, nobody really knew what was totally wrong. It
Hmm.
was, this was in the late 80s, right? Early, maybe 1990, 1989, 1990. And, so, like, they tried a couple medications, nothing was really working. And I just thought that I was broken. And so I ended up going into like like an inpatient mental hospital for a few weeks. And while I was there, it was to try to try different medicines and stuff. But I was feeling so bad. And, at the time that, the therapy was basically like, just do something to get your mind off of it.
Hmm.
Go play basketball. And I was like, this is not working. They're like, go make leather bracelets. And I'm like, this is also not working. And they're like, go play the piano. And I'm just like, this is not working. And what worked was sitting alone in my room at night and drawing on a napkin, like just scribbling, and realizing that, like, okay, an hour had passed and I felt fine. Like, I wasn't thinking about
Right.
how I'm going to die and how all these things are happening. And it focused. So that was a pretty, overnight drive where I was like, I don't have any long-term goals. I don't even care about anything except I know that, like, to feel better, I need to do this. And like, I kind of gave myself, like, I was 14 or 15, which was way beyond kind of like the, 5 and 6-year-old lessons. But I was like, I'm going to start at the beginning. I'm getting these 5-year-old how to draw books, and I'm just giving myself homework and, drawing cubes and gingerbread men for, a year, just to feel better,
Yeah.
and then it just kind of never stopped.
I mean, it's occupying your mind is the best way to battle anxiety and depression. I mean, at least from what you're saying is what I'm gathering,
Yeah.
because that's my experience too. And
Yeah.
and honestly, like, I have no artistic ability at all whatsoever. But I understand what that's like, because I would doodle a lot, and I have
Uh-huh.
notebooks of doodlings. I have comic backing boards with doodlings,
Mhm.
all that kind of stuff. And it's just like the time disappears, like
Yeah.
all of it disappears. And it's the same way with what I do now, not just the podcast, but the comics and stuff like that. Whether it's reading them or hunting them, time just disappears. You know,
Yeah.
and anxiety is it's the fear of the future, like what hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah, especially with me. I'm like, I mean, there are some forms of anxiety that are based in kind of like regret of the past, of what could I have done better in this and that. But yeah, mine is all kind of like unknown, uncontrollable, like loss of control. Like, it's just like it all spirals out pretty quickly.
do you always find that your mind and this might not be your experience, but do you, like, is your mind so busy that's where the anxiety comes from? Like, you're thinking about for me, sometimes I'll wake up in the morning and it's five things. There's five things going on in my head, and I'm just like, I haven't even woken up yet, and you're my brain's trying to tell me that I have to talk to Alex Pardee today and the things I need to ask him. Like, no, stop.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, 100%. Like it's, sometimes it's so much creative overload. Other times it's so much like, potential paperwork overload and business
Mhm.
overload, and then just kind of like personal life stuff and this and that. And like, oh, someone's birthday's coming up, or I have to go visit my parents soon, or this and that. But also it is like, what am I like? Oh God, there's 7 emails I have to answer. Like, I don't want to do this. And, and I'm like, why am I not even just like getting up and taking a walk first? And, so yeah.
Yeah. And I think now these days, especially maybe like the last 10 years, it's great to hear people kind of open up about it because like you said, when you're a little bit older than me, but not that much, I mean, there was nobody for me to talk to about it.
Yeah.
Like I would just run to the nurse's office and say that I had a stomach ache because all of my
Oh, that's exactly what I did.
yeah,
Yeah.
my anxiety
Because I did. I mean, I did have a stomach ache.
yeah, 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 because
Like
that's where
there was no like faking it. I was like, my anxiety manifested as being
mhm.
physically ill.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I and so art is your output, but even going back, with the EC reprints, because I know you're a huge Tales from
Mm.
the Crypt fan. Do you think that also helped to shape your like the genre of your art or like where your mind goes when I mean, look at the guy behind you, Pinhead with the chains. I mean, that Graham Ingalls might have
Right.
looked at that and been like, "Oh, well done, well done."
um, I mean, it definitely has sculpted my interests,
Mhm.
right? I think my my sense of kind of sarcasm and dementia and like uh, yeah, like I don't know, like it kind of feels like Tales from the Crypt was a and Garbage Pail Kids too was a perfect blend of like something that people look at as horrific and scary at the time, and but it's also like very cleverly sarcastic and
Mhm.
satirical and funny, and and that and the other influence during that time and still to this day was Gary Larson from The Far Side.
Yeah.
And it was just this way of looking at the world through a different lens that really opened my eyes into being like more observational and more like interested in like giving life to things that don't have life, right? And then mix that with the Tales from the Crypt and all this other stuff, and eventually comic books and movies. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all I mean, your mind becomes a blender of just mixing all these things up that you love. It's interesting
Yeah.
because I don't remember who it was that I spoke to about Larson, but he's somebody that I would grab the Sunday funnies from my mom, and the two things that you seem to gravitate towards, or what I gravitated towards, would be Farside and Garfield, and those two things
I
fascinate.
actually, to this day, don't I no idea why. Like, I can tell you for hours why I like The Far Side. I could not tell you why I like Garfield, but hey,
You know what
he's
though? Like
abusive. He's angry. He's a grump.
he's an asshole. Um, but,
Glutton.
Larson it's funny, Larson's from Tacoma, and I think he lives
Mm,
up in Seattle these days, and obviously, not in the public eye,
right.
very interesting, those cartoonists at that time, like Larson and Jim Davis and Charles Schulz and all these guys, Watterson, Bill Watterson, like, I don't know what any of them look like because they've never really been in the public eye.
Right.
Schultz maybe is the one who has
Right.
been or
You
had
know what? You know what older Schultz looks like.
yeah, 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 yeah.
When there was finally the museums and the book signings
Right,
and
but
stuff.
not young
Yeah.
Charles Schultz. Um, so yeah, that I can totally see the Gary Larson influence. I know another thing that horror movies obviously is a ongoing love of
Yeah.
your life, and I know you cite Creepshow as being the one that kind of turned you onto it, but even more so, I love the fact that you talk about often the influence that the graphic novel had on you, which is
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I
amazing.
I got the graphic. So they came around the same time. Once again, my dad, who's like the most book smart person in the entire world, right? Like he was a librarian for 40 years, 40 plus years, was basically head of acquisitions of the county library, which basically meant that his job was reading books for a living and reading snippets of books to see what's approved and not approved to come into the library. Um, and so he would always have he would bring books home, and everybody in my family was readers, and he would bring things home for everybody.
Mhm.
And so, after bringing me the Tales from the Crypt stuff, and then I think like it might have been the same year. Creep Show was 84, but I didn't see it in the theaters, obviously.
Yeah.
And so it was not until I think the following year or two when we rented a VCR for my sister's birthday. She's 2 years older than me. And they showed Poltergeist and Creep Show, and I wasn't allowed to go down, but I snuck down there and watched it. I was completely blown away by both. Those are the first two horror movies that I saw, and I was just like, I want this forever. Like, this is so cool, whatever's going on in these. And then and my parents were always very acceptant of our likes and stuff, and so they were like, right immediately had the discussion of like, hey, okay, you obviously like this, it's a movie, we need to talk to you about this and this and this and this. And so that there's a separation between movies and reality, and none of that's real. Anyways, I got this book for you from the library today, and it was the adaptation of Creep Show by Bernie Wrightson and Stephen King. And I was just like, oh my God, there's a book of it. And so, that was obviously the first time seeing Bernie Wrightson, who didn't know who he was at the time, but it made that much of an impact on it, which, made a lot of sense considering that was the next, that was basically inspired by Tales from the Crypt as well. So it was all weird. Yeah. So, so that definitely kind of was my foray into like trying to soak in all things horror. And I think one of the things that is always interesting to me about my work is that, like, as much as I personally love horror, I love serious horror, I love silly horror, I love, elevated horror and folk horror and whatever, like, I don't necessarily produce straight horror stuff.
Right.
Like, it's definitely, there's horror in its blood, and there's current thing with hell, right? Like, that's fine, but like a lot of the stuff that I do is kind of like, it's not, to me, it's not even like gory or scary or anything. It's more just like confusing.
Well, and not to skip ahead too much, but it was a shocker when I started hanging out with you and Dave and found out that, like, you're not a pothead. Like, I like, you're not into drugs and stuff. And like, I always thought, especially with your artwork, because of the color, the use of color, I was like, oh, this dude's just like, doing acid every weekend and just, but and then I got to know you, and I'm like, oh no, it's just where your mind is. And it's not straight horror. It's like you said, it's almost like if horror and you could hear colors was a thing. I don't know, like.
Well, it all. I don't want to say there hasn't been any inspiration since third grade, because there definitely has been a million.
Sure.
But like, when I do trace it all the way back to there, Santa Cruz skateboard graphics were so hyper colored and neon and vibrant, and Garbage Pail Kids were vibrant and colorful, but there was dolls getting their heads chopped off and puking, and and that was confusing to me. And I think that aesthetic has always been pleasing to me, where there's these bright colors that lift you up and this subject matter that makes you just really like going like, I don't know if I should like this.
Were you a skater at all, or just like the skateboard?
Well, I was a skater in terms of like when everybody was a skater in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Like up until I took a year off in high school and then tried to do it again as a senior, and realized that within that year I had grown an inch and my center of balance was way more fucked. And I, ate shit after like one kickflip. And I was just like, I don't know if this is really the best thing to do right now.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I was never super athletic, so I didn't really continue skating, which I do wish I did, because of the agility that I probably would have kept up.
Yeah.
But also, like, I'm a pretty big klutz, so I would have gotten injured.
It's West Coast skate culture, which is pretty much skate culture in its entirety, was such a fascinating thing to me. Santa Cruz and Creature and Tony Hawk and all these great things like Gleaming the Cube. But
the Search for Animal Chin, all the Powell Peralta Bones Brigade stuff.
It's a style, and it's a lifestyle too. But yeah, I was just curious, because that all the things about the West Coast fascinated me as a kid. That's why I was listening to NWA. I was listening to the West Coast rap as well as the East Coast stuff. But it was more accessible, the East Coast stuff.
Yeah.
Do you remember like the first time that you and this might be completely you don't, but do you remember the first time that you created something illustration or art wise that you were really happy about? Like you looked at it and you're like, wow, I'm really impressed with what I just did, on this canvas or whatever.
Oh God. I I don't know.
Fair enough.
I don't. I think that I mean, still to this day, like I'm satisfied by completing an idea,
Mm-hmm.
but usually I'm pretty quickly on to the next thing. It's very rare that I'm like that. Like I mean, that sounds weird, but like I've definitely like recognized that okay, this is complete and this is done in a competent manner and
Mm-hmm.
it's cool. But yeah, there's nothing where I've just been like, damn, that's
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if that's a thing when it comes to creating art. Like there are, I mean, things that I've recorded and stuff that I've done that I'm like, oh, I'm really proud of this. But I don't, like art is a different thing when you're talking about like an illustration or.
There's a few things from like a commercial standpoint. There's a few things that like I took on that were huge challenges that like were out of my wheelhouse at the time or something that like I didn't think that I'd be able to do. And then when I was done, I was like, actually, like those are pretty good.
Cool. Yeah, like maybe you did a bunch of albums. You worked with the Used for what, 6 years?
I did seven or
7?
eight. Yeah. Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah.
From what 2003 to about 2000. Yeah, so 7 or 8 years. Yeah.
And that was a big undertaking, I'm sure. Let's dial it back though to something that I think is fascinating. And a lot of people may have heard this before, but I know there's a lot of people that haven't. You created your first comic, or you want to call it a zine comic, the Book of Colors, and like you found your way into a store that, this was a DIY move that it impresses the shit out of me. How you got that into Tower Records.
So okay, yeah. So here's kind of like the loose trajectory was I got into art in high school to kind of like make myself feel better, and then didn't have too many friends, and then got really fascinated. I went to San Francisco a couple times, and then got really fascinated by a lot of the graffiti there.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of without going into like a long drawn out story, I got completely obsessed with graffiti and found this community in graffiti and did this. And I was just like, I'm never going to do anything else. Like I still love horror movies. I still like rap music. I still like this, but I'm just doing graffiti. Like, this is it. And this is the only people that understand me. And I was like, not doing any, like, I'm just doing letters, my name, it's going to be great. And then kind of like during that time, I did learn a lot of kind of like lessons about, not so much business, but like things that I applied to later in life, like things like not being so precious with my art because it just gets painted over in a day, or, like if you want to advertise, don't wait for somebody to give you money to do it, just do it yourself, that kind of stuff. So there was a lot of DIY culture in the graffiti culture, but during that time of doing that, I started developing an interest in more writing and more comic book style stuff and more cartoonish kind of stuff and more character driven stuff and storytelling. And I separated that from my graffiti. So at the time I was kind of like, going up and down, but kind of taking that DIY approach, I would make these little zines and I was just like, well, maybe I can get these published. Like, I don't know, like, how do people get published? And doing this in a time where the internet is still not totally accessible and you can't just like Google how to do something, right? Like I was just like, I'd find PO boxes of publishers and I would send these zines that I knew were not comic books, but I didn't know what else to do, right? So I would send these to every publisher with a cover letter that's like, I don't know what this is, but it'd be cool if you published it, right? It was super naive. Like, I didn't know that I shouldn't be that direct. And I got all these rejection letters and I was just like, that hurts. I don't think I like this rejection stuff. I think I'm just going to do it myself. So I'll look into like, how do you make a comic book? Oh, you just got to get it printed. All right, cool. Like, so then I would like, I found like this co-op printer in Florida that like just would like gang run stuff for like, a percentage of the cost. And you would all of a sudden get these zines for basically next to nothing. And that allowed me to like give them away and stuff. So, so I like made up like a pretend publishing company, and then I started sending those directly to stores. And once again, no, like go through a distributor, go through Diamond Comics, go through this. And I was like, Diamond Comics rejected me. I don't know. I don't like this rejection thing again. This is dumb. I'm just going to do it myself. So then I would go, and I was like, almost had like a vendetta. I was like, all these comic book stores told me to fuck off. So I'm just going to not go to comic book stores. I'm going to go to where like people might actually appreciate it. So I was going to like tattoo stores and bookshops and record stores, and like, basically just giving my comics away for free. I was going in there and I would just like slap them on, and like even Tower Records, I would go in there and I would just put my comics in the
free thing.
Yeah, just like whatever, like give them away. And Dimple in Sacramento, and there's a bunch of places, but yeah, so then it was more so just like that was my kind of like on the ground distribution. And then I ended up sending, one of the places that I sent them to was Tower Records officially, like to their magazine department, because at the time they were like one of the biggest distributors of indie comics and magazines and worldwide distribution. And the guy that ran the department, his name was Clint Johns, and he basically like totally changed my life. He's amazing, awesome. But our first kind of meeting on the phone, like I called him up and he was like, and I was like, hey, I sent over these books like for you to review. And he looked at it and he goes, oh yeah, we don't carry comics. And I was like, oh, and I thought of like, this is the quickest decision in my head. And I was like, oh, like knowing how many graffiti magazines that they carried, and how many like, and how much, of an influence graffiti had on me. I was like, oh, it's not a comic book. And he goes, it's not. And I go, no, it's a graffiti coloring book. And he goes, oh, it's a graffiti coloring book. Okay, we'll take 100 of them. And I was like, all right. And I sent him 100 of them. And then he called back like a week later and he goes, hey, that coloring book you sent over? And I go, yeah. And he goes, we sold out of them. Can we get 1,000 of them? And I was like, what? And I was like, well, shit, now I got to figure out how to print 1,000 of these things like in a minute. And then that kind of like became, and then they, instead of doing the local stores, they kind of started sending them out, to all of their countrywide stores, and then eventually London and Japan and all these places.
Wow.
And that started my relationship. So then every time I would do a zine or, a comic and whatever, it was comic format, and it was just like a lot of like journal entries and it was like illustrated short stories and blurbs and thought and stuff. But every time I would do one, they would buy, a couple thousand of them and sell them out and then get more. And I was like, this is crazy. And, I obviously like I wasn't making any money because I was paying for all the print run myself. Doing short run print runs is doubles the price.
Of course.
Selling it for wholesale, half the price. So I was like but I was like getting the distribution. And in a time where there wasn't an internet, so to speak, there wasn't social media for sure. There was internet, but no social media. Like at that time, it was like an incredible source of like, worldwide kind of distribution.
And it's like, it's marketing. I mean, it's getting your name out there in the best way possible, because you are beaming your name directly to the people that you would want to see who you are. It's
like I never did traditional superhero stuff anyway. So doing stuff in because once again, at that time, I mean, like, obviously there were indie comic stuff, there was Robert Crumb, there was Daniel Clowes, there was, Sam Keith, there was these things that were less superhero-y, but for a majority of it, it was still superhero comics at that time.
Yeah. There was the indie scene was not on the forefront as it is more so these days, because a lot of the properties that they adapt are indie properties. People today don't understand what kind of heaven Tower Records really was. I mean,
dude, I would just go there and spend hours just staring at. Yeah.
My high school in Long Island was about a mile and a half from the Tower Records, the main one on Long Island. I would cut class, I'd go there. Midnight releases, I'd go there. I mean, like, what people don't understand is, like, not just zines, not just indie comics, but, like, porn. Every magazine in the world, every record, doesn't matter if it's a big one or an indie one, tapes, VHS,
Yeah.
and then, DVDs.
Art books,
Yeah,
like
art
regular
books.
books, everything. Yeah.
And then when McFarlane pops up with the toys, they start stocking the toys there too.
Yep.
And
And that was because of a guy named Kevin Winnick who
really?
got moved to a subdivision. So I became like really familiar with all the inner workings in Tower. Tower, the headquarters were in Sacramento. So when
Right.
I lived there, I got integrated with like kind of like I eventually went on to work for Clint Johns in the magazine warehouse as one of like I needed a job,
Sure.
right? Like I was not making money from comic books. So he was just like, you could have like a minimum wage job in the warehousing department. I'm like, sick. So that, but Tower Records was super, super interesting and inspiring to kind of watch this family business get big. But yeah, this guy, Kevin Winnick, got hired to kind of like rework their merchandise a little bit, and he added toys into the mix, and it just like took off. It was crazy.
Yeah, they were slapping around every retail store that did one of those things. They were like, "Nah, we got all of it,"
Yeah.
And they had imports. Like it was such heaven. And I don't know if I'm sure you're familiar with it, but obviously I was just in Japan last month. There's Tower Records there still.
I think there still is one in
There's
Shibuya, right?
Yeah, I went to both Shibuya and I think the other one was either Akihabara or Shinjuku. But anyway, the
Yeah.
Shibuya one, I'll tell you my experience because you'll get a kick out of this. It's 7 floors and obviously it's different things, but I go up to where the records and movies are, and I walk in and it's 2024 and they're bumping the new Linkin Park album, and I'm like, literally getting emotional because I'm instantly rushed back to my late
Yeah.
teens, early 20s, and I'm just like, wow, I miss it so much. We don't have it's not even that we don't even have the retail landscape, but we don't have a store that caters to people like us anymore.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I'm sure you're not the only person, if we polled a lot of people, that got their start in the way that you did, but I just remember the creativeness that you would see of their whatever, product. Whoever
Mhm.
was doing the products was really creative and it catered to us.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I still will like begrudgingly wander into Barnes and Noble hoping to get that feeling again. And then I
Yeah.
just go in there and I go, there's a bunch of Timothy Chalamet magazines. That's cool.
Yeah, it's really, really nothing. You're not going to find anything that you don't know is going to be there, and that's
Mhm.
really the thing.
Yeah, that's true.
We do. I mean, I feel bad that a lot of people just won't ever have the chance to discover the way that we discovered, or be discovered the way that you
Mhm.
know you were discovered, or people like you. But what can you do? I mean, that's why one of the reasons why I like doing this and the other channel is because I want to be able to be like, hey, check this out. Like, this is an artist you should see, or this is a comic book from an indie person that I befriended, because I think there's still, there's people like me. There's Sean Crystal who does Ink Pulp. There was Kayfabe, just in the comics, and then obviously art altogether is a different thing. But it definitely pays to, if you're making a book, send it to somebody that has a public facing channel, because if I can talk about it, I will. If it's something that really jumps out at me.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, so speaking of that, this is not um, just as far as like, so I'm a huge proponent of sending, the equivalent of fan mail.
mhm.
Like, anyways, like if you like somebody's art, like send them a DM. Don't
Yeah,
expect a response,
right.
but send them a DM, or keep commenting on their stuff, or like if they have a way to physically send them something that you do, like do it. And if their invitation's open, I'm not saying like bombard people with your stuff and,
Sure.
and send your scripts to people unsolicited, but like, if the opportunity's there and they're willing to see it, and if not, just send a nice DM. I got like most of my earlier commercial jobs from reaching out and just being like, hey, this is my stuff. I really love what you do. If there's something that we could work on together, that would be cool. If not, I will continue to enjoy what you do. Great. Like, but like even going on before that, just because this is comics related, the thing, Tower Records definitely, helped change my path and stuff and secure that. But even before that, before Tower Records, I started doing these zines and comics, and I was just like not. I was doing them for myself, and I was not confident that anybody would ever want to see them, right? So, based on the fact that I got all these rejection letters and was just kind of giving them away for free, and there was no way to give me a response, right? I didn't have a website, whatever, and but I sent them to people that I looked up to at the time, and one of those people was Sam Keith, who had a PO box, and I had written a couple letters to him about the Max and this and that. And at one point, he even published. Actually, it wasn't published, but whatever. I did fan art for that, and for the the mailbox and stuff. But I sent him one of these horrendously printed out Kinko zines before I was even printing them professionally, and just wrote this long letter and did some fan art of Iago, one of his characters, and didn't hear anything back. And then like I was ready to quit. I was like, you know what, maybe this isn't for me. Like, I don't know. I'll just do it as a hobby, but I'll just kind of figure out something else to do.
Sure.
And then it was like 6 months later, then when I was just kind of thinking about quitting, I got this postcard in the mail, and it was nearly illegible, but it said, Alex, thank you for sending me your work. Your work is amazing. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position to offer any additional work, but keep up what you're doing. I'll see you in the future. Your work is great. Love, Sam Keith. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, damn, that's crazy. So like that one thing was like, okay, I'm going to like, I don't care what anybody like, cool. This is enough to kind of keep going.
You got the most unexpected, positive reinforcement that you could have ever asked for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that one thing, like, obviously I probably would have, still done art because it was therapeutic, and it always will be. But that direction that I was going might not have continued in that direction without that just little nudge of encouragement, which I think is important, and why I always kind of am just like, yeah, tell people if you like their stuff, tell it. Like, you never know what kind of, I don't know.
Dude, we don't get it enough at all, period. And, as humans, and we go micro, and we don't get it enough in the things that we put in our output. I mean, I do, value the positive reinforcement that I get from my friends. And then it's really nice to get it from strangers too. But you're right. It's such a strong thing. I mean, look, not to talk about Dave any more than we already have, but Dave is one of the reasons why I've been able to like, okay, this is good. Like, I am doing something that people enjoy, and you too. And you're one of the other people that has given me great positive reinforcement on this. It's huge. It's absolutely huge, and I bring
it helps. Cheerleading helps, man. That's why they have cheerleaders.
Yeah. And I bring people onto the show because there's something about the thing that they create, whether it's music, movies, art, or all of it. And that's my way of saying, hey, thank you. And I want to talk about it. I am a huge fan. And I think I've known you. I mean, I met you like, it's got to be almost 15 years ago at Harman.
It was probably around 2008, 2009.
Yeah. And I remember, something that I love talking about with you and Dave and everybody is the kind of the rejuvenation, the birth of the print, the posters and the pop culture related stuff that kind of burst onto the scene in the 2000s. And yeah, it was at her gallery that you were doing a show. And I was like, yeah, I love this dude's art. And I didn't really even know Dave's art, but
was that the one of the Zero Friends shows, or was that was the one where I dressed up like to Maury Povich, where I was Maury Povich with tumors all over me?
It was the one before the Tumor show.
Okay.
When you did the Tumor show, it was you and Chloe, right?
Oh, yeah.
And Dave wasn't there, but I went and bought a piece, one or two pieces. But yeah, that was maybe Tiny Trifecta. It was one of them, but it was.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, Tiny Trifecta. That's right.
And Tara's another person. Like the scene was so strong when it was able to be, but obviously everybody just gets kicked out of
Well,
whatever city.
like it's weird because there was like it's definitely, I would say in terms like, I know in some ways it's easier for younger artists to kind of make a path now because there is, kind of a thing, but also there's an oversaturation of it. There's a lot more competition. So it's probably a lot harder as well. So I'm not kind of negating either, but like when we were doing it, when Tara and I was doing it, when I was doing it, like there was no path. There was no path. Like when Skinner was coming up, there was like no path. Dave, the self, like we all took our own individual path with no goal of just like being like, I have this art. I'm really inspired to do it. And I'd like to put it out there and I'd like to build some kind of personality brand around it and, to figure it out. And like, at the time it was like, it was like Skinner and Tara and Shepard Fairey and Mike Giant. There was a few artists in this kind of like world that were building brands kind of unknowingly with their art. And, and now there's kind of like roadmaps of like, okay, you need to do this first, and then you need to have a social presence, and then you need to do this, and then this and this and this. So yeah, I don't know. It was fun, but it was cool to connect with somebody else like Tara who was doing that on her own.
Yeah, and it felt organic. I mean, you and Dave did a cross-country trip called Sketch for Sketch Tour. Like, what? What in history of time, there might have just been that one window where you could pull something like that off and not be broke and like, have a 3-wheel.
Well, we were broke.
Well, all right, not broke.
We were definitely broke.
Not so broke that you couldn't get home. How about that?
No, yeah. Well, that was also like, so yeah, so we wanted to just like, that was every single thing that I think I've done, and I believe Dave has done as well. Like, it's always been because like there's an initial, okay, let's try to do this the way that people say we should do it. And then when it looks like there's an obstacle, we go, fuck it. Why put an obstacle in our head? Let's just do it. So it was like, what if we did like an art tour and it was like, oh, well, you got to get a booking manager and you got to do this and you got to do this. And I'm like, but what if I just like call somebody and say, can I have a signing at your shop on this date? And then they go, yeah, I think so. And I go, okay, let's do it. I'll call the next person. And I'm just like, all right, we got 30 places we're going to go within the next 8 weeks. So let's do it. And then it's like, well, we need a budget. And it's like, well, we've always just hustled. So like, we're not going to like, if we're not going to get stranded, like if we get stranded, like we will make art and sell. Like I sold comic books on the sides of like garbage cans for years when I was like, living in Sacramento and San Francisco. And like, I just always felt like there was that hustle to not stop creating. So I need to fulfill it in some way. Right.
And you always seem to have ideas in anything. Like I've watched your, like, aside from friendship, I've watched your career of you thinking of these things to do. And I'm just like, who thinks of that? Well, clearly you do, and it's inspiring because like at the end of the day, I feel like you do have only 2 real career paths. It's the career path that we're told we should take, corporate, whatever, get a job, or it's the fuck it, do it yourself and hustle. And I don't know, like, I don't know. I've been in both worlds now, and I really don't think I'll ever go back from this where I am, this do it myself.
No, I mean, there's definitely, I think it's really, really cool now that there is a middle ground that is not a safer route, but definitely a smarter route, because it's like all of the assets exist now for any artist or any creator, whether it's musician, filmmaker, whatever, to use the minimum amount of affordable tools and basically create and build a path for yourself in a certain direction. Right. And I think that like, with more encouragement on saving money and not spend, like there's just like, I mean, we were, and I think Skinner is very relatable in the same way where Skinner and I like both are just like, literally fuck it. Like, I'm never going to afford a house in California. I'm never going to be able to do this. So like, why, like everything that I do is going to go right back into my business. Like,
Yeah.
if I make $100 on a painting, that $100 is going to pay for gas so I can go to Reno to do a signing. Like that's, like that's the thing. And in hindsight, obviously that's not the smartest route, right? But we didn't have TikToks that were like, by the time you're 27, save up at least $200,000 and this and that and blah 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 blah, right? Like we didn't have any advice at all.
No, nothing.
And like, and any advice that was there was go to school and then get a job.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so
Do your
so, like,
40 hours a week.
it's pretty exciting now thinking for younger artists that have a little bit more opportunity to create paths for themselves and to get advice and learn quicker on. Like, I mean, every day I meet like a new, or not meet, but like see like a newer artist who's like younger, who's like in their mid 20s and they're already like not only phenomenally good at what they do, but like you can tell it's like they have a 5,000 square foot art warehouse and like,
Yeah.
they have a brand and a business. And I'm just like, man, that's so awesome for them. And I'm like, I'm jealous a little bit, but also like good for them. Like that's cool.
Yeah.
I'll keep hustling and not saving money.
There's definitely a lot more information out there, and with that being good, it also does get crowded sometimes where
Yeah.
you're overloaded. Like me trying to figure out how to grow my podcast.
Dude,
It's like
I
bashing
mean,
your head against the wall.
no, because like, what are you up now? 10,000 subscribers?
No, no.
5,000?
The West Coast Adventures is at just crossed over 5,000. And
5,000.
this
That's what it was. I knew
podcast,
there was a big milestone. Yeah.
yeah, and this podcast is still in its infancy, like maybe like 300 to 400 combined subscribers. But the thing is like telling people when I'm live, when I'm on the other channel to come watch this, and it's growing because of that, because I'm explaining to people like I don't always want to talk about comics,
Right.
but you don't want to mix the two things because then people will get, "Ugh, I don't like this." But
Yeah. But like on that same note though, like literally I think what's cool about nowadays, so like let's say you started the podcast 10 years ago,
mhm,
right? And you had 100,000 followers. Like by now, those 100,000, like 90,000 of them they have different accounts. They're gone. They don't remember they subscribed. They're not getting notifications. So your like engagement will be really low in comparison. Whereas now I feel like the algorithms and stuff have like weeded so many stuff out. They're like the people that you're growing, it's slower, but it's organic.
yeah,
And those 5,000 people, like 4,000 of them are going to be watching at almost every point, right?
mhm,
Or same with the podcast. Like you're getting that engagement and getting those people in it. And if you can make an impact on 100 people, that's awesome.
yeah, that's
Like,
that
like
is.
if you imagine like a room filled with 100 people listening to you, like that's like, okay, that's insane.
Dude, it's weird, like, even just thinking about my live streams, the sales, having 80 people in there,
Right.
and not all of them are buying, but everybody's listening to me, and I'm
Yeah.
be randomly singing or dancing or going,
Or
"Penny,
doing
would you
car
like some
jobs.
sausage?" Like, yeah, like, it's just and, I mean, like, I think I see it in you, one of the things that I've always seen in you is, like, you enjoy performing, not like sitting there and like speaking to some crowd of people, but like performing through your art or through a fake game show dressed up as a tumor-ridden game show host. Like you seem like a natural doing that. There was nothing like I didn't sense anything out of you other than just you were playing the part.
Yeah, well, you didn't see like the 7 hours of anxiety.
Well, yeah, that we
But it's like that with everything. And I talked to Dave about this a lot too. Like it's, uh, there's something, I think that I worked retail for like 8 years, right? I worked at KB Toys. Awesome. Hated it. I didn't hate it, but it was just like, whatever. But in hindsight, greatest job ever. No responsibility. So awesome. Could do whatever the fuck I wanted. But I think that like having the safety of a counter with a cash register allowed me this like I'm supposed to talk to people and engage with people.
yeah.
And like doing that for 8 years, like every time if I went to my lunch break and as soon as I walked from around the counter, I would shut up, not say a word to anybody. I'm just like, don't look at me. I don't know what's going on. I'm nobody. But behind that counter, I'd just be like, hey, welcome to KB Toys. You want to buy some batteries for that flipping dog? Cool. And I think that really helped me kind of realize, like, okay, if I'm at a convention, if I'm at a signing or whatever, it's like I have the safety of the table. If I could strap it to me, I would. But like I have the safety of this table, and like if people are walking up to the table, that means they're looking to be talked to.
Yes.
So I can go, hey, how's it going? Thank you for coming. You know?
As somebody that's been on and off in the con scene for years too, whether it's doing my own, working with somebody, or just hanging out with Dave or whatever, it's the same thing. Like, that's the comfort place. Like, you are safe behind that booth, or, whatever it is. I understand that. I totally understand that.
I mean, I woke up this morning and telling Chloe, I was like, I got to be on Dave's podcast today. I was like, I haven't talked, like I basically have been a shut-in for like 2 weeks. I'm like, I haven't talked to anybody for like 2 weeks. I haven't posted anything online. I haven't drawn anything. I just kind of feel shitty. I don't know. I hope I'm okay. This is going to suck. Maybe I should cancel it, and then I turned it on. I'm like, oh, it's just Dave.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah. That's how I felt too. I'm just like, oh, I mean, I wrote my notes, and those are my notes. Oh wait, those are my notes. But
with your portrait of me.
But to me, it was just like, oh yeah, we haven't seen each other in a bit. And, I know what's going on, and I obviously wanted to make sure you guys were right after the fires. But yeah, I was just like, oh, this is just talking to somebody that I could talk about literally anything. With, like, I could talk to you about, we could just talk about Todd McFarlane toys, the Spawn toy.
Oh, we have to have a separate whole podcast.
Yeah, that's a separate,
because I want to prepare for that one.
Yeah,
because that was we can have a whole. It'll be about Spawn / KB Toys.
Yes, and I would have to chime in at least with my experience of working at Electronics Boutique, because they were carrying that stuff too.
They were EB Games.
Yeah. 97, which would have been like what, parallel to the time that you're working at KB.
Yeah, I was there 93 to 99.
Yeah. So parallel on that. So let's talk about, I'm bummed that I didn't get to see it, but you just finished up a show at the Harmon Gallery, which was their Doppelganger show, which was absolutely beautiful. Like, the layout of it, it was stunning to see, and there was some animatronics. Like,
oh yeah, this guy. This guy.
There was the conjoined.
Yeah. That one's kind of broken up on the floor right now. We had to take him apart to get him out of the gallery. But
congratulations on that show. I know you worked on it like almost all of last year, right?
No, it was about 6 months, I'd say.
Okay.
It was about and yeah, no, thank you. First off, the sculptures were not done by me. This one was done by an amazing friend of mine, Aris Deo, designed by me, but done by him. And then the other two that I did were designed by me and built by Greg Aronowitz, who does a lot of my sculpting and fabricating and stuff. But yeah, no, the painting process, it basically started pretty much immediately after Comic-Con. Okay. So I knew that I had a show to do, and a lot of that time is spent thinking about what I'm going to do. But this one was, there was a lot of things leading up to Comic-Con that were occupying my mind and my time and this and that. So I didn't get a lot of chance to kind of figure out what the show was until right after Comic-Con. I was like, I got to hit the ground running. And then I created, over 10 years ago, I started this series of, I guess for me, they were therapeutic paintings that I called Dopplegangers, because they were direct mirrors of portraits of horror movie icons like Freddy Krueger and Michael Myers and stuff. But they were, when I originally started it, my idea was like, how fast can I paint these to where they're still recognizable, right? Like, and knowing how iconic some of these ones, it's like, okay, Freddy Krueger, green and red stripes, claw knife, hat, splatter, you know what it is, right? You know, and so it was very therapeutical for me to take these properties and just like go like, I want to paint Freddy Krueger, I'm going to paint it. I want to paint Michael Myers, I want to, you know, paint the dog from Cujo, this and that. But then the more fun I was having, the more characters I wanted to paint.
Right.
And then the more obscure the icons got. And it was a little harder to do something that was like, you know, splat, that's the Cloverfield monster. It's like, I don't know, it's not, right? Like that doesn't look anything like it. Like, so I need to actually like do a little research, be like, oh yeah, okay, here's how I can kind of make it. So I continued, you know, kind of making these loose watercolor paintings, but it was also a way for me to teach myself how to do watercolors.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I was kind of slowly learning by giving myself a subject matter and a style. And I did those for a while, and I had a book come out about 7 years ago called Doppelgangers. It was the first collection of these paintings. And that was published and distributed by Ginkgo Press, and we sold a ton of them, and it was awesome. But I kept adding to that series a little bit after that, right? I kept like, oh, fucking Fury Road came out, I need to draw a Paint of Morton Joe, or like this and that came out. And so I was adding a few more, and then I was having a hard time kind of coming up with what this new collection was that I wanted to do. And simultaneously, I was putting together a reprint of the old book because it had been sold out for 7 years. And I was like, well, I have like 10 or 15 new ones I'm going to add to this reprint. And I was like, what if I use this time to make this book insanely bigger and paint as many more as I can for the book? And then I can have more fun. Like, it's just going to be more fun for me, because otherwise I'm going to be doing both at the same time. And I was like, that's going to be fun. So I didn't fully commit to it. I was just like, maybe part of the art show will be that, and then I'll do something else. And then I just started having way too much fun and checking off my list of things that I wanted to do. It gave me an excuse to rewatch movies. I got to paint and draw and mess around. And then, you know, I ended up doing like, 200 new paintings for the thing. So it was awesome.
So you could have gone 65, but you decided to go 110. Yeah.
I think the final count for the show was like up to 130 pieces. I think I did.
Well, I meant like you could have gone 65 miles an hour.
Oh, right. But
you went 110 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Are we going to see right here, right next to my ear, is the puzzle? Wait, the puzzle. Are we going to see another Doppelgangers puzzle? That is the most infuriating puzzle I've ever done. But
because of all the light and all. Yeah. Possibly. I did. A lot of people did have fun with that. I got to find another manufacturer though, because about 5% of them were missing one piece. It drove so many people crazy, which I get. But yeah, I mean, I just have fun doing that project. And so the new book, I'm not sure when this is going to come out, but the new book is coming out soon.
It'll be out next week, actually, this podcast.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So the book won't quite be out now, but we did have a special preview edition available at the art show that sold out, but I have the regular edition coming out soon, and it's over 300 pages of monster portraits that I had a lot of fun with.
Yeah, I remember seeing the first ones and kind of regret not trying to buy the Jaws, but what are you going to do? Can't win them all. But they're kind of like what they always felt like to me? In Army of Darkness, where there's the little ashes running around.
Oh, right.
That's all of the Doppelgangers. They are, because they are what, 3x5, 4x5.
I kind of, for this newer collection, they originally started as all 5x7 paintings.
5x7.
And I because I was like learning more and trying to do a little more detail, they moved up to about 6x9.
Okay.
8x10, yeah.
But yeah, they always reminded me of just like, these are the miniature versions of all of these monsters and creatures. And yeah, you went. I mean, I saw some of the photos of this year's show, and I was on the Harmon Projects website or gallery website to see. But you did some great obscure characters. I mean,
there's some deep cuts.
Yeah,
and there's even more deeper ones that I want to do. But it was fun.
That's awesome. Well, Congratulations.
And I had so much fun at the show because I was there. You know, we had the opening
Mhm.
and we had the closing, but in between that for 3 weeks, I was at the gallery every day that they were open,
Oh, wow.
and I would just talk. It was so much fun for me to like talk to people and like be like, are there any of these characters you've never seen? And they'd be like, this one. And it gives me an opportunity to talk about like, oh, why I like that movie, or like, oh, you got to see this one. It's
Mhm.
cool. Like this one might not be for you. It's a little gory, but this one's amazing, you know, and it was really fun.
What, I know Substance was up there. Was that your favorite horror movie of last year, or what?
Oh, but that was my favorite movie of the year, I
It
think. Yeah,
was?
that was my favorite movie of the last few years, I think. Like that, The Substance, like, just completely blew me away because, you know, it was like, you know, one not we're always going to be going back to these Tales from the Crypt thing. It was the best episode of Tales from the Crypt that I'd ever seen.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
really cool.
like
I
it
still
was.
have yet to see it. I
Oh yeah, no, without spoiling anything, it's that watch it with that knowing that like it follows the Tales from the Crypt thing where it's like presents a hyper stylized world that, you know, could be real, could be not. These
Mhm.
characters are overacting, overdone, and then something happens, and then someone gets their comeuppance in a creative way, and you're good.
Which is ironic or funny because, Demi Moore's in a very early Tales from the Crypt episode, isn't
Yeah,
she?
yeah, she is in
Yeah,
Dead Weight, I believe it's called.
yeah. "If I
Yeah,
can't have you, no one can." And he's
yeah.
yeah,
She
no,
marries
that will live rent free in my head for the
Charlie. Oh
rest
my
of my
God, what's
life.
his name? Charlie. Damn it! I should know this because I should be an expert at this point. But yeah, Charlie Marno maybe is his name. Anyways,
We
yeah.
will, we'll put the fact checking up on the screen for the
Played by
podcast.
Jeffrey Tambor, though, I know that.
Ah, that's right. Yeah, there's a couple episodes that I'll never like, I never try and remember because they're always there, like the Sam Kinison episode where he's jabs his
Oh,
thumb,
yeah, yeah,
you know? But,
yeah,
great
yeah,
show, classic
yeah.
show.
Dude, also, so here's a Tales from the Crypt thing that is the coolest thing for me is, you know, seasons probably like obviously season 1's great, but like seasons like 4, 5, and 6 are they have some of the most creative. They're some of the longest seasons. They have the most episodes. They're some of the most creative effects-wise and stuff. Uh, later on in life, later on in life, like recently, I guess I should say, later than the Tales and Good thing, like, you know,
Yeah.
me as an adult, I ended up becoming online friends with an effects master, no pun intended, named Todd Masters, who owns a company called
Mm.
Masters, and he ended up working with me on some projects and incredible team, all this stuff, awesome. But I found out that he was the team lead on the effects for like 3 of those seasons of Tales from the Crypt,
Oh,
and so
wow.
including Demon Knight the movie, and so I like have been just I was hounding him with oh my God, remember when you did this, and remember when you made Steve Buscemi's eyeball pop out, and it was so cool, and you know this and that, so it was fun.
That's a world that I mean, you know a lot of different people. You've worked with a lot of different people in the FX world. Is it something that you ever wanted to get into or something that you could see yourself doing more of as your
I
career goes on?
definitely wanted to do that. Like I think, you know, there was like I tried to take kind of like an effects course when I was like, you know, in maybe 15, 16. It was always very anything to do with your hands is very anything sculptural, anything crafty wise.
Mhm.
There's something about my hands that don't do that properly,
Fair
and
enough.
not that like not that I can't disciplinely teach myself to do it, but obviously the passion for that didn't overwrite the passion that I had to draw and paint.
Yeah.
And so as much as I have wanted to, um, it's still, you know, it hasn't overtaken this thing. So I still would like to, you know,
Yeah.
I like to make a mess, but also I think that I like working with people that know what they're doing
Mhm.
because it just makes it that much more exciting for me to see. I think like my goal in life is to kind of like expand my characters and my world into other mediums that I can't do, right? Like video games,
Mhm.
animation, sculptures, movies. And so if I was to make a sculpture of my character, it would have the same effect as if I'm drawing it. I'd be like, yeah, that's fine. And I'd
Yeah.
push it off to the side. But if I scribble an idea, and give it to somebody and kind of work with them on what it should look like, I get so much more excited to share that, because it removes me out of the critique of it, and more I'm like, you guys should see what this person made because it's fucking cool.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, you're always very vocal about doing stuff like that when somebody creates something based on your creation. I mean, didn't that what was the name? I'm sorry, forgive me for not remembering the name of the movie on Hulu that you designed. It came out last year,
Yeah, Mr. Crocket.
Mr. Crocket. So talk about that a bit, because that chair, what was it? It was
So Mr. Crocket was a really, really fun thing. So I got brought on to design a bunch of characters and puppets and set pieces for this horror movie that was pitched to me as basically um, Candyman and Nightmare on Elm Street meets Mister Rogers, and Pee Wee's Playhouse. So I was like, this is like, that's everything. Like, why would I not want to do that?
yeah.
Like, that's incredible. And the company that brought me on was actually Masters Effects, was Todd Masters. So
Okay.
that was one of the recent projects that we worked on. But one of the reasons why that was really cool was because the filmmakers had a specific vision that they wanted, because that was kind of like their point of references were stuff that had already existed,
Mhm.
right? It was like, here's something we kind of were thinking about, and then my job was to be like, I'm going to present you with something that you haven't seen before, and we're going to do that. Right. So it gave me an opportunity to actually like push the boundary on what my designs can be, and try to make stuff that we haven't seen before, and make these characters and these puppets that were real practical, like
Yeah.
not CG related or anything. And they were going to be puppeted by multiple puppeteers, and we were, stuff. And so they were like, okay, well, we want like an evil chair or an evil bear, and and the references were like an evil bear, and I'm like, okay, no, this is like Hellraiser style, like this is fucked up, right? Like we're gonna, this cute little bird is gonna end up turning into a fucking Cenobite, like we're gonna rip his mouth open, and we're gonna pour his guts out, and he's gonna be terrifying, and so they were into it, so it was cool.
That's I mean, that's exactly what people should
Yeah.
do. They should just let you rip.
Yeah.
And with
And if
that
you haven't seen it yet, anybody that hasn't seen it, watch it, because I want there to be a sequel so I can make more monsters.
all right, well, I'll get on it. Maybe I'll watch it tonight.
And if there's not a sequel, then that just means that I don't like that rejection. So I'm going to make another movie myself.
And I do have I'm gonna speak directly to Hollywood right now. I have an idea that just came to me, and I don't think that Alex would say no to this. Peter Jackson producing Alex Pardee's remake of Meet the Feebles.
Oh, I mean, so Meet the Feebles is pretty perfect. I would not say anything. I would not say no to anything that Peter Jackson wanted to be involved in. But doing a Meet the Feebles remake would be amazing. My only I don't even think it would be a stipulation, but the only thing that I would probably need a little more guidance on is, I don't know what has happened to me as an older adult, but I think way less sleazy now.
Fair enough.
And so I'd be like there's a lot of awesome sleaze in that movie.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just like, I would have to like consciously be like, what sleaze? Like, do we incorporate the sleaze? And if we don't, is it still cool? Like
Well, you could take the sleaze and just make it more graphic and
yeah,
not
yeah,
sleazy. I mean,
that's
the
true.
replacement of that is, to me, I mean, I went to film school for a year. I thought I wanted to be a director, but my direct influence was seeing Bad Taste in middle
Mhm.
school, like
Oh, that's
1988,
fine. Yeah,
whatever, 1991.
yeah.
And I know Dead Alive is a huge movie for you. It was for me too. I mean, it's
Yeah, I mean, Bad
amazing.
Taste and Dead Alive were and The Frighteners is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Oh, it's
I mean,
so
Dead
good.
Alive also as well, but yeah.
He's his career path is so inspiring. It's like Sam Raimi or James Gunn, where they start at the schlockiest, most
Mhm.
low budget level, and one goes on to direct the three greatest movies of all time. The other one goes to direct and make Marvel Studios and now DC Studios, and Sam Raimi's just Sam Raimi.
Yeah. Dude, it's super inspiring. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. You
And once again, similar. Obviously, they're on completely other levels, but when they were making, there wasn't a path for them.
right.
Like there was no internet, there was no advice, there was no anything. They were like in their own little towns, just being creative and being like, this is therapeutic to me. I'm going to make it whether anybody watches it or not.
Mhm.
And then eventually people are like, oh, you should make more stuff.
It's funny too when you see some of them talk, and a lot of directors that are bigger these days talk about like, oh, their favorite movies, and with the letterbox thing is becoming a thing. But all these are video store kids, and none of them are watching Akira Kurosawa at 17. They're all watching the schlockiest, like low budget shit that they could find.
I
Um,
mean, yeah, I mean, maybe like they, you're saying nowadays?
no, I'm saying like those guys back then.
Oh yeah. Back then, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. When they go into the Criterion closet, you're like, I don't know, man. I think you're reaching a little bit far.
But I mean, you discover things as you get older, and
Yeah.
certain, I don't know, I always go and still kind of go back to these movies that give me comfort because they are made at a DIY aspect. But that's a future topic of one of my podcasts is about comfort movies, and I know that's a big thing for you. My comfort movies are it's weird. It's weird. It's David Fincher stuff. But
Yep.
is
I
there
just went and saw
anything?
Seven on IMAX the other day. It's incredible.
Wait, what'd you see on IMAX?
Seven.
Oh, God, that's right. They're re-releasing it. See, it's just a comfort movie. That
Yeah.
and Social
That's,
Network, and the game sometimes. But
dude, the game is so underrated.
it
I
is.
love the game.
It's a movie. I was speaking to a friend the other day about, like, he pulled off, it's very few and far between that a movie can really pull off a surprise ending, like something you don't see coming. And
Mhm.
obviously, Shyamalan is a, is a blueprint for that. But that movie, you just every time you think that, oh yeah, it's just a game, it's bullshit,
Yeah.
and then they pull you back in, and you're like, oh, there's no way it can be.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so yeah. I saw that. I still remember the theater that I saw that in, and it was. I remember the reaction that I had. And I was like, wow, because I mean, I had the same reaction with Fight Club,
Mhm.
as well. And then I was just like, man, he did it again. And Seven, there was the first. Those were different reveals than Shyamalan movies at the time, but still,
Yeah.
like, just as impactful. But yeah, one of my comfort movies that is not the best thing to say publicly, but I love Cannibal Holocaust as a comfort movie. And not for any of the content that I have, but mainly for the sound, the score. The Riz Orlani score is like so comforting and calming, and then occasionally we'll get like,
Right.
and I'm just, it's weird. Like, that was one of the movies that, like, I saw on VHS, had no idea what I was going to watch, and then watched it. I was like, this is crazy, but cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's, well, especially Fincher's second part of his career, his working with Reznor and Atticus Ross has
Mm.
become, his movies are a
Yeah,
comfort, but the scores are a
yeah,
comfort too.
totally.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that dark stuff or heavy stuff, music or movies does really provide a big comfort for me.
Mhm.
So I like to explore what other people watch to just kind of go into their, quote unquote safe place or whatever. Won't keep it too much longer. What's coming up from the pipeline for you?
Um, well, I'm continuing to kind of, I'll always be kind of trying to expand my personal kind of like art brand, apparel brand, kind of that, that's kind of one of the bread and butter. So you can, I'm constantly doing shirts, I'm doing zines still, and art books and toys.
Mhm.
Um, as far as like specific projects, I have stuff kind of like on the back burner that I had kind of put off to do my art show, but I don't have any large commitments because I just kind of wanted to clear my brain for a minute
Sure.
after this. And then, once the new year hit and the fires hit and everything, it's been kind of like, I don't know what's going on yet. So I'm just kind of focusing on my brand at the moment. Um, but yeah, like the book release is coming out. I would like to do like some kind of mini book tour for it, so I might be putting that together sometime soon. But yeah, I don't know. I'm always just like, writing, drawing, pitching stuff. Since I've been in LA, I've been trying to pitch movies and cartoons and all that. And once again, like I'm not giving up on that. It's a tough, but
Yeah,
trying.
that's a nut to crack. I mean, even though you've worked on, some great projects with people like Zack Snyder and Bobcat Goldthwait, and yeah, I can imagine getting your own thing, and just getting
Yeah, I mean,
something to live.
it's a whole different world to like work with somebody on something that they already have funding for
Yeah,
versus trying to get funding for something that you're making.
yeah,
You
yes,
know?
and getting an audience too. I'm sure is just
Yeah.
like it's a game that I hope I never play. But are you still doing anything with the trading cards with variants at all, or is that
Oh yeah, we're still actually. I'm glad that you brought that up. I have worked on what I call the companion series to my Tops series, and that's been ongoing. And we have actually 2 more companion cards that are coming out within the next month or so that will be the final 2 for that series. And then I also have another kind of ongoing series with them called Spoiled Sports that are kind of Garbage Pail Kid inspired.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I definitely am still, in the trading card world as well. And who knows? I mean, that industry is still really big and cool
Yeah.
with all the different printing stuff you can do and stuff. So, like, who knows? I'll try to get into some Magic the Gathering and Pokemon stuff. So
Well,
figure that out.
and for anybody that hadn't seen, I'm gonna link it in all the descriptions for this podcast. I had Alex on when your Garbage Pail Kids set came
Mm.
out, and we opened 2 boxes, and I had a fun. I mean, like you brought me back into cards, and I was just excited for your stuff. But it would be nice if it would be smart if Marvel approached you about doing a set now that Fanatics owns the Marvel card license and they've got all this money to throw around. But
Well, you know what I think? I think it's kind of one of those things that I've always kind of has been a little bit of an obstacle for something where it's like, oh man, I wish Marvel would call me. And then I'm like, oh wait, I don't have anything in my roster that would give Marvel any reason to call me, right? Like
right,
it's not like, imagine if Alex did Marvel. It's like nobody in the corporate, not nobody, but a lot of people in the corporate thing don't have that imagination. So they need it kind of presented. And so like, I think that like, I can't get mad or bummed that Marvel's not calling me. I have to like present, like I have to do some spec work, right? It's
sure,
like that. And once again, that's what I've always done to like get stuff. Like even with the Tops thing, like they weren't 100% sure with me, and I had to pitch them on what I wanted to do. And I was like, I can't just tell you. I have to show you. So I have to do 3 cards, and if you like it, cool. If not, I just wasted a ton of time.
yeah.
Like,
It's just strange to me. Like I am not in the industry, but from the
mhm.
sidelines, I watched you with the Project 70 have some of the all most of the highest numbers of cards sold. And then the Garbage Pail Kid stuff sold out completely so quickly. If I was a business person in one of these corporate structures, I'd be like, we can make money with his stuff. Like, isn't that the point?
I, I mean, I I I haven't. I obviously have a great relationship with Tops, but I haven't talked to them since the Garbage Pail Kid thing. And I think what happened was one of the reasons why the Garbage Pail Kid project got delayed when it did was because that was in the middle of the Fanatics acquisition.
Yeah.
And so I genuinely don't know if even the team that I worked at with Tops is still there. Like I don't know if Fanatics knows who I am.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
once again, like without reaching out to somebody and being like, "Hey, remember me?" Like, and also that like it was hard, man. It was a
Yeah.
hard
Oh, I know.
it was a hard create. Not only was it so far out, like sports being so far out of my wheelhouse, whenever you're working with corporate things, like especially like the MLB, you have approvals from the team licenses, approvals from the corporate of Tops and Fanatics, approval from the player association,
Yeah.
approval from the commissioner, and it's like, a lot of the times it was like one of those five people's like, I don't really think he should be drooling that much. It's, does it really matter, right? Like, okay, fine, I'll cut down. So it was a little tough, but I loved it. I'm really happy with the final product.
It's I both were fantastic. I really, and I kind of, every once in a while when I'm like, I look at one of the cards or I'm going through a box and I find some of the Garbage Pail Kids ones that I put on, and I go on and I like just kind of go into Reddit or I go into, onto the internet, and like everything was positive. Like people were just really, there were so many people that those trading cards brought them to
Mhm.
your world, and I'm sure they're fans now. I mean, that's the whole point, right?
Yeah, one of the coolest things I think from the project was how many notes and messages I got from fathers who were like, "I've collected cards my whole life. I could never get my kid into it, and
Mhm.
now I showed them some of yours, and now they finally get it, and they're collecting cards with me now." And I thought that was cool.
You know what, the positive power of art is just such, it's such a great thing when you hear people say that, or you read it or whatever. And I think I, there's not enough color in this world. There really isn't. And
Yeah,
what you produce does put more color into the world. It's something that I think everybody that has ever looked at your art can agree on. There's a lot of color in your art and your world that you bring to us, and we're all thankful for it.
thanks.
Yeah. So, I'll put all your links down below, the apparel, the website. I'll even throw the Harmon galleries on there. So if somebody wants to
Cool.
buy one of the originals, because there's
Yeah, they're
still
still
some left.
available. Yeah.
And no, Alex, man, I miss you. I haven't seen you in a while. I haven't been to LA since.
I did. You know what? This is a fun little thing for me, a little nerdy thing for me was I actually got to go comic book hunting with you the last time you were here, and that was fun. Even though I still think that I am a bad luck charm
It's
because
not you.
not only did we not find anything, but every time Dave Korea's come down here too, I've gone with him and we found nothing, and then like the next week he'll be like, "Look what I found," and I'm like, "It's me. It's got to be me."
No, it's Los Angeles. I mean, we went to that one sale that was in the back of the store that had like hundreds of thousands of books, and it was like, oh look, Turok 2 and Darkhawk 5. I can't,
Yeah,
like it was bad. It was bad. I think we still need to do, the three of us, like a mini road trip. Like it doesn't have to be a week or anything. It could just be both of us fly up to the Bay Area and we go somewhere, or Reno, and
yeah.
something
I
like
would
that.
still, I would still like to join you guys on that. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, yeah. The more the merrier, especially when it comes to like the deep nerd knowledge that we all share. It's an inexhaustible well.
Yeah.
So
Also, speaking of comic books, I have advice for anybody that's watching. You should all go and rent, since it's not in theaters anymore, Craven, the movie.
I started watching it the other day. I
The
watched half
best
of it.
movie that's ever it's not. I'm just kidding. But it's so like I you should watch it
Just
because
watching it.
if you can get through the 45-minute flashback of him as a kid, then you're good. But like I remember being like not that I had high expectations at all,
Yeah,
obviously, but the most recent kind of like, the Spider-Man, the Todd McFarlane Spider-Man Torment run, where Calypso kind of like
brings him back to life.
reanimates Craven again, temporarily again, and whatever. Like that was the vision. I was like, Calypso's in it, Craven's in it. This is gonna be like, this is gonna be it. And then watching just like Calypso as a kid, bringing Craven back from the dead as a kid with just like a drop of. I was like, this is insane. It's like it's whatever. But yeah, go see it. It's really fun.
I I said to my friend the other night, Craven was more about family than all of the Fast and the Furious
Oh
movies
my god, it
combined.
totally was.
They
Yeah,
should call it Craven and Family.
yeah, yeah,
Fucking bad. It's bad, but
yeah,
watch it. I'm gonna finish
yeah.
it tonight.
All
But
right.
Alex, thank you so much for doing this. I'm excited that whenever we see each other again, I'm excited to let everybody know that they should scoop up all the Brightmares and go to sleep with them, holding them. So thank you so much.